My name is Christina Lopez-Robin. I am going to be the moderator today, and I'm just going to turn it over to our fabulous presenters.
Thank you. Thanks so much. Thank you all for joining us, and thank you so much for being with us, Christina. And I want to thank the Relo office for this opportunity. This conference has been amazing. It's absolutely amazing, and it's been a fun learning experience for me. And I'm happy to be here with Ivan Spazo and Susan Kobashigawa today. And oh, Denise, thanks. It's amazing. We're happy you're here, and we're really thank you, Denise. What we're sharing today comes from work that we've been doing with the Relo office. So we're excited. We're going to start out. I'm going to do a little bit of an intro piece, and then Susan's going to do a piece about leadership and brave leadership that we were working with, and Yvonne's going to do a piece about systems thinking. We're going to show you how this course about learning leadership, cultivating leaders has come together. So this course is a course that we just gave. Welcome, Karina and Beatrice and Nancy. Happy to have you all with us too. This is a course that was sponsored by the Relo office, and we just finished it up in September. It was beautiful. We had 28 teachers and coordinators from Access Peru, and the facilitators were Yvonne, Susan, and myself. And we want to share what the course was about, and also some of the results and responses from the participants. So that's what we're going to do here today. We're also going to practice a little bit about what we did on the course. So one of the first things that we did on this course was to start out with a land and people's acknowledgement. Which is a practice that I started doing it with this course, and it's something that has to do with understanding who we are as individuals within a world, within a system, and to begin our work together, recognizing the land, the people that help us be who we are today. So I'm just going to read this out loud, and afterwards I'm going to invite if anybody would like to add anything, they certainly can. The people of the Institute for Costa Rica, people of the Institute for Collaborative Learning in Costa Rica acknowledge with gratitude that we live, work, and play on the traditional territory of the Huetar, Bostals, and Rama peoples. And in the United States, we do so on the traditional land of the first people of Seattle, the Duwamish. We acknowledge as well that our colleagues in Peru live, work, and play on the traditional lands of the Inca, the Achuar, the Agaruna, the Ashanica, the Shipipo, the Huambisa, the Quechua, and the Aymara people. And that people attending this conference from all over the world also thrive on land with history that we honor. On all of these lands, we endeavor to live, work, learn, and play with respect, humility, and compassion. We recognize and cherish all languages of the world, including all of the languages spoken in the communities, homes, offices, and classrooms of participants, organizers, and facilitators of this conference. Finally, we acknowledge the future generations that will live and care for this earth and for the people that will live here. We strive to give them and their children a safe, abundant, healthy environment filled with love. I'd like to invite if there's anybody else that would like to add something in the chat, if there's any other land, people, or languages that you'd like to acknowledge specifically, you could write it in the chat. Just want to create a little space for that. And I want to share while people are thinking about that we started out with land acknowledgement, but because of the participants on this course, because of some of their comments, we included acknowledging the future people. And then because of an experience that we had on another course we were working on in Nicaragua, we decided we really want to also include languages. And so landed people and language acknowledgement is something that's evolving in our practice. And it's a way for us to land and be together.
That was a really beautiful statement. Oh, I'm sorry, I just wanted to say it was really beautiful.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, it was beautiful.
Thanks, Christina. Thanks. Have you done the land? Have you done that kind of acknowledgement?
That was very thorough. It was wonderful. I really enjoyed it.
Great, thanks. Yeah, it's an interesting way to get started, like bring our minds here, bring our hearts here, bring our ancestors here. And say, okay, now we're here. The second practice we start our class out with is mindfulness. So Julio, thanks for showing up. We're going to practice now. And for this practice today, I want to invite people to use this beautiful photo to help us pay attention to our breathing. And this is what I'd like to invite you to do. As we inhale, start someplace at the bottom of the mountain. And as you inhale, your eyes will move up to the top of the mountain. Hold your breath a little while at the top of the mountain. And exhale down to the other side of the mountain. And hold your breath. And then you're going to inhale and go up. Hold. Exhale, go down. And if that's too much, just look at the picture and breathe and enjoy the picture. Okay. So we're going to just take a minute of silence, and I'm going to invite you to notice, savor, enjoy your breathing, and enjoy the picture. So just 1 minute. Thank you very much. That was 1 minute. These are two practices that we start out with just to bring ourselves here, to give ourselves a little space inside of us before we dive into our work. I want to share with you this question of why leadership? Why is it so important for us to think about leadership? And we have these two beautiful videos from our Access students talking about why leadership is important to them as students. So each one is about a minute long, and I'm going to play them for you now. I hope the sound is going to work okay. Let's see.
Hello, my name is Kelly Kisbet. I'm
Can you hear?
From Liverpool. The Access program changed my life and helped me to discover my leadership and true potential. This program was an amazing journey full of knowledge and transformation, personal and professional as well. Your work is so inspiring because students can find their voice and true potential to become global citizens with a capacity to change their community, their country, and the world too. Also, they can develop a sense of cultural awareness, understanding the differences and similarities with other members of different cultures. Additionally, they can become leaders with a positive influence on their community at many levels. And finally, they can find new opportunities that can change their lives and others. Teaching with purpose is so incredible. You have the chance to change students' lives to achieve their dreams and goals. Thank you so much.
Love it. She's so clear about why she wants to learn, why it's important for us as teachers to understand leadership and teach leadership and cultivate leadership. This is our second one.
Hello everyone, my name is Dario. I'm an exact student and also the winner of Alumni TOEFL with a project that has a long name. But basically it's about making strategies to raise environmental health and teach to communities about how to take advantage of resources in a sustainable way and improve their quality. This project wouldn't be true without leadership. And when I was part of the Access program, I learned a lot about this. I learned that if there's something you can do, you should take matters into your own hand and start making changes, or at least try to do something. And here I want to say why it's important that teachers develop their students' leadership. First of all, it will help them to develop and improve a different aspect of his or her life. Second, the student will become an active member of the community and an actor of change by making a social project, for example.
So now Dario.
Sorry to interrupt,
telling
Mary.
us
Could
that-
you summarize that
Yeah.
just a little bit for those of us who the audio was a little bit low, and I just would hate everyone to miss what he had to say. Could you just
Sure.
summarize what he said?
Good point.
Great,
I was
thank
just
you.
about to say that. Thanks. We're on. Yeah. So what Dario was saying is that it's so important for teachers to help students learn to become leaders so that they can make changes in their communities. And he did a special projects that he feels like with the leadership skills that he learned in the Access program, he was able to do those projects. And these are some students that learned about leadership before we came into the picture. But I think they're such beautiful testimonies to why it's so important for us, even though we're English teachers and thinking about focusing on English in and of itself is it's a language, but what's the content that we're really working with? We're working with humans, and leadership is a really important content that I think we can layer into our work. And so this course that we just finished delivering, we called it collaborative leadership. And this is a beautiful definition that Brene Brown has given us about a leader is anyone who takes responsibility for finding the potential in people and processes and has the courage to develop that potential. So that's what we are. As teachers, as educators, we're working on helping people develop their potential. And in our course on collaborative leadership, we use two main approaches for thinking about this. There's a lot of different theories and ideas about leadership out there. And Susan is going to talk with us about brave and daring practices of leadership, and Ivana is going to talk to us about systems thinking, and then I'm going to come back and share a few of pieces of the final projects that the participants created to sort of show you some of the impact. So I'm going to pass it over to Susan. Oh, here we go.
So Susan, I think you are muted.
Okay.
There you go.
How's that?
Great,
Okay.
we can hear you.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. I am coming to you from Seattle, Washington. And it's gray and cold here, but I'm so excited to be with all of you in Peru and from around the world. The section that I'm going to be talking about is Dare to Lead, and it was our lessons in leadership. And if you go to the next slide, we will be able to see kind of the person who was key in the research that we were looking at is Brene Brown. So some of you may know Brene Brown because she's a researcher on shame and vulnerability. She had a big TED Talk, and it's interesting when we think about shame and vulnerability, we think about, well, what does that have to do with leadership and why those two topics? So I wanted to tell you a little bit more about why we chose Dare to Lead and some of the questions maybe that helped us through that. So in our next slide, you will see kind of 3 points about why we chose Dare to Lead. First was that we wanted a new framework for understanding leadership, right? And we'll talk about this a little bit more, but the current model that we have is one that some people will maximize, but it will leave a lot of people out. And we were really interested in how do we help youth, today's youth, and especially Access students, how do we help them, equip them to be leaders among their peers, and then as they grow older, to the different influences that they have. We also wanted teachers to be able to model this for their students. So it was important for us to work with teachers, and especially teachers of youth that have influence all over the country. And finally, we wanted students to be able to lead from a new source. So instead of leading from maybe an older idea, an older framework of leadership of maybe power and aggression, we wanted them to think differently about who they were and who their peers are and who their and what Peru was going to look like. Right? So in our next slide, you'll see a visual. We wanted to turn leadership upside down. And we did that through one of the largest concepts in this section, which was on vulnerability. And this is where Brene Brown's work really came into play. She talks a lot about vulnerability and being vulnerable. But along with that, you'll see next that there were two other concepts that we were really focused in on. Vulnerability was one, but in cultivating leadership, we also wanted to cultivate courage and also cultivate empathy. Right? And these three really changed the framework of leadership that we wanted to present. So you might be thinking, what is vulnerability? What's the definition? This is the definition that we use that Brene Brown had written in the book. So she says, vulnerability is the emotion that we experience during times of uncertainty, risk, and emotional exposure. So it's that moment when you are maybe being confronted with a large problem or someone is confronting you. And it's a very vulnerable, it's a very risky time. But what the vulnerability is that instead of running away, that we stay. And we stay and we hold that space and work through that. Right? Brene Brown goes on to say that vulnerability is the birthplace of love, belonging, and joy. She also says that it's the birthplace of creativity. And so vulnerability, we felt, was such a core concept in what we did. And it was one thing that we tried to incorporate in different ways in our course, were these little practices of vulnerability. Right? And so we had discussions and all of this to model for our teachers what they could model for their students. We go on to see a participant comment from our course where this one said, I used to define being vulnerable as a weakness, but now I don't. I think that being a vulnerable leader makes you more open and emotionally available to your group, being more empathetic with them, therefore making them feel more comfortable and open-minded when it comes about sharing ideas, improving the performance as a team, and giving or receiving honest feedback. And I hope one thing that you're starting to see is that leadership isn't about grabbing one specific spot and closing in on the power, but really we saw leadership, and especially for youth, that it was opening up what they, their influence and who they were interacting with. So I have takeaways, and 4 takeaways that maybe you can take away also from this section. One quote that just stuck with me, and I think all of our participants, was this first takeaway, that clear is kind, unclear is unkind. And that in moments of vulnerability, you know, when we had to talk to a student about maybe their grade, or we had to talk to another colleague about teaching or lesson planning, instead of avoiding the conversation, that what we understood was that to be clear in an empathetic, in a compassionate way, but to be clear was kind. And that when we weren't clear, when we were indirect, or when we kind of went around in circles, that it actually was unkind in our exchange, right? So takeaway number 1 was this, and it's still this mantra that I have today, every day: clear is kind, unclear is unkind. The second takeaway, and this one was a little bit more, it has a visual image to it, but the cave you fear to enter holds the treasure you seek, right? So the cave you fear to enter holds a treasure you seek. So a lot of times we will turn away from something that's hard, but what Brene Brown was talking about was that when you actually enter that cave, that's where your growth, and it's where you thrive, right? So the next slide will actually give you kind of the paraphrase of this, which is face your fears to find the power and wisdom to serve others. And so I think this also is a time when we have to be vulnerable, where we have to kind of stay with it, even when it feels hard, to face our fears in order to grow from that, which leads to being able to serve others. Our takeaway number 3 was daring leadership is ultimately about serving other people, not ourselves. And this is why we choose courage, because it's not about us. And so leadership is about serving others. And we really wanted teachers and the Access students to be able to understand this, that leadership is also about service. It's not about the ego and the self. Our 4th takeaway is that daring leadership is leading from heart, not hurt. I'll give you an example of this. If you go to the next slide, Mary, one of the things we were specific about is that there was no blame and no shame in this type of leadership. She says that, Brene Brown says that blame is the discharging of discomfort and pain, right? So someone who's not vulnerable. So when leaders point to and say this group of people, or this is the reason why something happens, that's the discharging of discomfort and pain. The next one actually is a definition for shame, which is the intensely painful feeling or experience of believing that we are flawed and therefore unworthy of love, belonging, and connection. And this was something else that we wanted to avoid, that in leadership, we don't blame and we don't shame in order for everyone to thrive and to grow. So the next thing that Brene Brown talks about is the antidote to shame, that there is a way to disengage shame. And that shame, she says, from her thousands and thousands of pieces of data, is that empathy is the antidote to shame. So teaching students to be empathetic, to working with colleagues in an empathetic way is one way to disengage shame, right? Very quickly on the next slide, we have some, the 5 empathy skills that Brene Brown talks about. So it's not just about teaching empathy. She gave very clear steps, and we went through these steps in our course. To see the world as others see it, so taking perspective, to be non-judgmental, to understand another person's feelings, to communicate your understanding of that person's feelings, and mindfulness. And we had that mindfulness practice at the beginning, but it was important because what mindfulness does, it helps us to be present with other people. And that's part of the empathy skills that we need. I want to leave you with this final comment from a participant. And she or he said, I used to think that leaders should only focus on goals and results no matter what. I viewed workers as people with so much potential, but forgot the human side of it, that they have fears just like me, that they have dreams just like me, that they hope to be understood just like me, and so on. As I embrace vulnerability, it feels less heavy, but feels more human. And this was the new model of leadership that we wanted to share with teachers and the youth. So thank you. That's the end of this Dare to Lead section, but that connects into our next section, which is on systems thinking. So Yvonne, I'll let you take it away.
Thank you, Susan, so much. Good morning, everyone. Good morning, the ones that are live watching this session on Re-Evolution Conference. It's a great conference. I wanted to take a chance to congratulate the organizing committee. As a past president of the Nicatiso conference, I know how it takes to organize an event. And this is a great, amazing event that I have seen online, ever online. So I'm learning a lot from what you've been doing, and I'm very curious about you have been doing behind the scenes. And good morning to the ones that are watching this recorded. So I'm gonna talk a little bit about the principles in system thinking. So one of the components, as Mary introduced at the beginning of the section, was system thinking. So we talked about principles in system thinking. So we're not teaching about system thinking as a definition, but I'm using different principles during the whole course. So in the next slide, I have a definition of what system thinking is. Maybe you might be asking, I would like to double check what system thinking, or I'd like to know what system thinking is and how is this related to leadership. So I have these two quotes. One is from Linda Booth Sweeney, who is the author of Connected Wisdom, the book we use in this course. And she said, if kids understand living systems, they are more likely to think and act in informed ways and less likely to jump to blame and blame a single cause for the challenges they encounter. And as kids appreciate and learn about living systems, they see that connections in nature, people, problems, and events bind us all. So we are all one. And whatever I do, it might impact you sooner or later, and vice versa. And Meg Whitley, an American writer, she says, living systems contain their own solutions. And this is very important for the pandemic. Somewhere in the system, somewhere in the world, are people already practicing a solution that others think is impossible, or they possess information that could help many others, or they defy stereotypes we have and have the very capabilities we need. So we try to, in this course, we try to move from traditional thinking to system thinking. And my personal concept of system thinking is it's a skill. It's a skill to understand how things are interconnected, influence one another within a whole. So we are one. So in this conference is one example of system thinking. So we're teachers from all around the world. I see connected people from Pakistan, and it would be great if I have the names of the countries in the chat. So we have people from the US, Costa Rica. I'm here in Costa Rica. It's a sunny, clear, and beautiful day in Costa Rica. So you're going to be everywhere in the world, but we're working as one for leadership. So in the next slide, I have an introduction. I have in the next slide, we have, Mary, in the next slide. Yeah, thank you. So this is the front of the book, in case you're more interested and curious about this book. I love this book because it's a book for kids and for students. As an English teacher, I think that this is a book I can use for high beginners and intermediate students. And it gathers 12 stories from different cultures. So it's about culture, it's about the world, it's about one thing. You know, the world is one world. And what I like the most is that she shows that what we now call system thinking has been around forever. This is nothing new. This is just discovering something new. This has been forever, and you can find it everywhere. And what I love is the way she introduces the principles through stories. So in the next slide, now that I have talked to you about my concept of system thinking, I read the quotes. So I have a question for you. You can write in the chat. Why is system thinking important for leadership in the 21st century? I'd like to hear one or two, or read one or two chats. And I have a picture of system thinking. So as a reminder, what I was saying, what system thinking is, and a picture that represents a leadership. Just giving a few seconds for participants to type and see why there's one reason. Why do you think it's important? We think it's important. Our participants think it's important. Our students also think it's important.
And Julio, if you would like to answer, not to put you on the spot, but you can unmute your mic if you'd like to answer that way, or if anyone else would like to join on video, I have a couple more spots available, so you can just click the blue button and answer that way.
No, first I would like to go to the vulnerability that Susan was expressing. No, I felt vulnerable because I thought I shouldn't be here. Those are the speakers, but I stayed. I stayed, and here I am. So this is a clear example of vulnerability. And I think regarding to what Ivan was saying, I can say that united together, we can get better results. Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah, together. And then every part in the system counts. We're all one. They're not different parts in the system. So in the next slide, I would like to now introduce.
Ivan, yeah. I would like. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just noticed that Edith in the chat commented, "We can solve problems."
Oh, yeah.
So I just wanted to make sure I acknowledged her comment.
Thank you for acknowledging. And also, Maria Elba. Yes, Mary?
I wanted to share my thoughts on this too,
Mary?
if that's all right. So,
yeah, please do.
I think systems thinking is really important for leadership because a lot of times we grow up thinking that in a blame mentality of finding X is wrong, so-and-so is to blame, fix it and move on. And it's not that simple. And so if we want effective leadership for the future, we need to have teachers thinking about how the systems work. And not just for leadership, for them to learn leadership, but also for the classroom to work. We need to learn about thinking about how systems thinking functions, what are the different ways of understanding the things that happen within the system. So I think that's also just really important. I wanted to share that.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And thank you.
Ling, I'm sorry again to interrupt, but Li Ling also commented in the chat that everyone in the system is connected to each other and thus could learn from each other, which I think is what you all have been saying as well.
Yeah, so we are interconnected and we are interdependent. So I depend on you and you depend on me too. Yeah, thank you, Li Ling. And thank you, Karina, for sharing the link for Access program in case you were more interested and curious about what's this program. So you click on the link. So this is what we're trying to do on the course. So it's just trying to cultivating conditions for sustainable change. And when we talk about change, we're talking about not changing the world, but change inside of me. So the change will start in me, within me. And then it will be transformation. But the change start, it's sustainable because I change it. Because I'm changing, I make an impact on somebody else, maybe my family, maybe my students, my colleagues, my friends in social media. And then we will also facilitate societal change for the sake of creating more sustainable communities. And that was the idea. So if I change, I can impact and change and help and impact other people to change in my community. So imagine a neighborhood and then we all changing together and working together as a community, as a neighborhood. So that will be amazing. And we're also creating collective creativity for spontaneous change. So this is about the collective. This is not about me being the leader and being the best, being the only one. It's just about we are all together, we're all the same. That's the basic principles of system thinking. So now I would like to give you an example of what we did. So because I said the book Connected Wisdom provides 12 chapters, 12 stories, one in each chapter. And each story from a different culture. So chapter 12, for example, A Connected Wisdom talks about Earth time. And Earth time is the pace at which life occurs for all living organisms. So, and this is the story in this chapter. It's the rice puller of Chaowa. Chaowa, it's a place. It's a guy who wanted to be the first one, wanted to be the best, wanted to be the leader, wanted to be acknowledged that he is the one and the only best producer of rice. So this is a farmer that ruins his crop by impatience. That's all the story about. What is the story about? So, and then what we did in the next slide, I will show you an example of what we did in the course. So when we think about Earth time, we think about it's a fine ways to slow down. It's just slow down so that our inner rhythms are attuned with nature. And one example for me is a sloth. When I see a sloth, I say, oh my God, I need to slow down. I just need to be here, aware, present in this moment, because I'm living this moment. I'm not living my past. I don't know if I'm gonna live my future. I'm living this moment, so I'll slow down and see what I'm doing, what I'm saying, because what I'm doing and saying is making an impact on my family, my friends, my social bubble in this pandemic, and my community at the same time. So in the next one, I'm gonna give you an example. So because Connected Wisdom was providing stories, I also was providing stories. So encouraging participants to find their own stories. So for me, it was an invitation to take a longer view, to slow down and understand that sometimes the result of our action lay in the distant future. So when I lived in the US, my first winter, well, my first autumn, actually fall, my first fall, I got sick. I don't know. I got depressed. I was tired all the time. I wanted to go back home. I was studying, but I didn't want to go to school. Oh my God, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know what, I was so sick, but I was okay, but I was so sick. So I went to see a doctor. And then when they saw me say SAD, it sounded like a venereal disease for me at the beginning, it's SAD. And then they explained to me what it was. So it was this seasonal affective disorder. So, and I said, this is okay, this is part of it. They didn't explain why I was facing this. But by reading this book, just by reading this book, the first time I read the book, I realized that I was getting ready for my first winter. I used to live in Brattleboro, it's a small city in Vermont. And it was my first time meeting the snow. It was my very first time meeting the snow. So my body was getting ready for my first winter. And I didn't get it at that time. I was so frustrated because I didn't understand. Didn't understand what the nature was telling me. So if I go in the next slide, I would like to say, before I share some comments, for me, nature is wise. And what is the greatest message that nature, my teachers, is sharing now with me with this pandemic? For me, it's self-care. If I take care of myself, at the same time, I'm taking care of you all. I'm taking care of the world. And that should be my priority, or that is my priority now. We're more aware of our interconnection, interdependence. We are all one. And if I take care of myself, I can take care of you. So if I'm flying and taking a plane, or I'm having a meal at a restaurant, or doing some grocery shopping, think self-care is my priority. And that's what system thinking is teaching us, and nature is teaching us now with this pandemic. So now I'd like to show some of the reflections with this Unit 12, with this Chapter 12, the Earth Time. So when we ask the participants, what are your takeaways from Chapter 12 and reading the story? So these two participants, different participants, say, I used to, thinking fast in results. So I just want results and thinking fast and going fast. But now I wasn't thinking about the process and the time things take. So this participant wasn't enjoying the path, the way, the different strategies and techniques to reach a goal. Or just showing on the goal, the target, and not enjoying the experiences in a way. So the second participant says, another aspect that came into mind is how the pandemic has changed our lives, has changed our lifestyles. So this participant was living at a fast pace, just working, and not becoming aware of her family. So now she says she has become more aware of the real needs of my family. In blue, I said, now I know exactly what my children, my two kids, she has two kids, they are learning and how they are learning. So it's so beautiful just reflecting and be fully aware of the present moment and what we're doing and what the impact I'm making as a parent, as a teacher, as a leader. And then the last slide for me, for this section, I have also comments from participants, 3 participants on this question. After learning about Earth time, what are 2 or 3 challenges or adaptations you would like to make in your life from a professional and personal perspective? So one participant say, because we included mindfulness in this course, so every session we started a session practicing mindfulness, the same way Mary started this session. So this participant say, I'm gonna practice mindfulness. So, because it's helping me to see my daughter, my sister, me seeing myself as a teacher, as a leader, and work with my students. So I say, I'm gonna take, this is my takeaway, and I'm gonna practice because I wanna be aware of whatever surrounds me. Another participant say, I would like to divide my time so that I can spend more quality, it's not only time, quality time with my kids. Isn't that amazing? Just becoming aware, raising awareness on this. And the last participant said, as a teacher, I would like to develop more soft skills in my students, because we talked about soft skills, what we call soft skills during the course. So I say, oh my God, this is gonna create an impact on my students. And why? This is the reason, this is beautiful, because this is gonna help them continue their learning on their own after classes end. So I'm not thinking about final exam, I'm thinking about life after this course, after my class. So what is something students can take forever? So that's what students is reflecting. And these are some of the examples of what we did on system thinking in this course. So I'm gonna pass it over to Mary, who's gonna summarize some of the final projects. Thank you.
Thanks, Yvonne. Thanks, Susan. And I want to thank Julio. I loved your comment about feeling vulnerable here. Thank you so much for being here. It helps us, actually. This is an interesting platform, and I love the idea that we can have at least some people with us here. I'm so used to Zoom where I get to see everybody, but I also think there's this interesting dynamic where we have 30 some odd people that are here, but they don't have to show themselves. And yeah, it's just an interesting dynamic, I think. And Kiran and Julio, thank you for joining us. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's nice. I feel like at least I have your faces to talk to, or talk at. And also sweet to see the chat happening at the same time as well. Leeling, thank you for joining us from Malaysia. And that's the Zen concept. That's another approach to mindfulness for sure, and meditation, that we can find useful applications in our educational world for sure. And so, yeah, thanks for these chats. Thanks, Marcella. I'm going to move forward and share a few final project slides that some of our participants did. We're still looking at them and responding to them. But I love how Camila opened up. This is her title, I Am a Leader, Made to Feel, Learn, and Connect. A lot of times, I don't know how many teachers feel like they're actually leaders. I remember many, many years ago, I was living in Brazil, 18 years ago, and I did some work on leadership. And I remember somebody there, I was doing a session on leadership, and I was realizing that the people in the session, a few people, their concept of leadership was actually a negative one. They were linking it only with political leaders that they didn't necessarily want to emulate or be like, and didn't like what they were doing. And so when we go back to Brené Brown's definition of leadership as somebody who is really working on developing people's potential, this slide to me is, she is clear that she can be both her potential as a leader as well as her job to help students become leaders. And this is her slide about what she's learned about collaborative leadership. And a few things that I noticed in this, I like this idea about how collaborative leadership will benefit us, benefit people. Is it will have the ability to know what we can contribute according to our abilities, right? And to be able to work as a team. and understanding, respecting the contribution of each participant, and feeling really comfortable working in areas where we shine, working in using our own strengths to contribute to the group. I thought that was really sweet. And here she writes that it's hard to see. Wait, let me get rid of that. Yeah, it allows our students to be great leaders in the future. I love that this teacher has a vision of her students' future as leaders. And it's not, they could be political, it could be economic business world, it could be educational world, wherever it is. If we link back to those 2 Access students, thinking about them, knowing that they can make a difference. That is the goal of all of this work. Another participant shared some of the ideas and concepts they put into practice during the course. So even in this online course in a virtual environment, we met once a week. And then we had asynchronous tasks, and they also met with their own mini small group once a week. But we met once a week on Zoom, and with that, reading and assignments, this teacher is practicing being more empathetic, learning to find something positive out of a problem instead of just focusing on the problem as something horrible, not letting anger control actions and decisions, investigating before judging. Those are all big concepts to put into practice. So yesterday in one of the sessions that we did on resiliency, and we were asked what gives us hope. This gives me hope. I see a teacher here willing to be vulnerable and say, you know what? I need to work on how anger shows up in my life. That's not simple to say. And to share that with us and then to actually put it out there, that gives me a lot of hope, because I do know that acting from anger, acting from a place of anger, doesn't usually lead to getting results that I'm wanting. Okay. So that's one example of how this teacher is putting some of these ideas and concepts into practice. Also, what I loved is her plans on continuing to grow as a leader, and the things that she wants to do: learning more, going to more courses, not forgetting the values, putting into practice the knowledge that we were working with. All of this for me was really exciting to see. That, you know, the course is wonderful, but this course is a place for her to then continue learning, as opposed to a course that you think, okay, I got it, I'm good, we're done. So I was excited to see that she wanted to learn more. And also her plans to guide students, right? To talk about leadership, to create activities for them to explore their values, to be a model, to try and live these ideas that we're getting in our heads, but are we actually trying to live them? And I have to say trying, because we're all human too. It's not like I learn an idea in my head and then I can just live it immediately. It takes practice, it takes making mistakes, it takes, and to process that, it takes vulnerability. And this idea to build an environment of confidence and respect, that is also something that gives me great hope. You know, if we have educators walking into the classroom thinking, we're working together on building an environment of confidence and respect. She's not demanding it. She's not saying, be respectful, you have to do it. Because that energy doesn't work. So let's build this together. What does it take for all of us to build this environment together? So this is some of the work that gave me hope. This participant shared how Brene Brown impacted her. And I thought this was fascinating. There is a before and after the Dare to Lead by Brene Brown. Never did I think I could be so moved or touched by a book. Dare to Lead gave me the opportunity to reinvent myself, not only personally, but also professionally. That's powerful. That's powerful. And I hope that this motivates some people who are with us today or who are watching this later on. to get this book. Brene Brown has done some fascinating work, and I think it's worth it for all of us to learn about how her research can be put into action in our lives. So that was powerful. And finally, one other participant's work that I'd like to share. He was very clear here about how these particular topics that we worked with have really direct learnings for him. So the one that I thought was very interesting, well, I think they're all interesting, but the idea of humor. He said, I'm taking myself less seriously. I'm working as hard and learning as much, but not seeing myself as a serious guy who has to look that way so that others see him with respect. I'm laughing more, joking more, smiling more. Vulnerability is the birthplace of joy. And by him realizing that and valuing his joy, he will be able to give that to others. And I think that that is a beautiful gift. I think it's a beautiful gift. The other piece I wanted to mention for him, because I know I don't know if it's just in teaching, but I've worked with a lot of teachers that live with a sense of needing of this perfectionist lens. I'm going to say that as a lens, a way of seeing themselves and seeing their own work. And I've heard a lot of teachers talk about how they wanted perfectionism for themselves, but not necessarily for the students. He said he realized that I was sometimes a perfectionist, but also realizing most of the time I'm just thinking about doing things right. And one of the things that we're learning is it's not always about doing things right. It's about showing up and being present and doing what makes sense to us, but also understand that we might have to process that. There's no way for me as a teacher to prepare a perfect lesson and I walk into the classroom and I do this perfect lesson, because I'm dealing with human beings and my students might enjoy it, they might not enjoy it. And if I'm not ready to adapt and change and to see based on what I'm learning from them, then I'm actually not helping them reach their potential. So starting to let go of the concept of perfectionism and starting to really lean into the concept of being curious about my learners is something that gives me a lot of hope. So we have 4 minutes left. Christina?
I actually think we have 2 minutes left. So yes, but that's okay. We have a 15-minute break between this session and the next session, I believe. So I do see some really interesting questions that I would love to address. I think Susan did answer one of them, but Li Ling asked a question here. I'm just going to read it from the chat. What if some students take our empathy for granted and take advantage of it by not doing their work or not following deadlines and instructions with regards to their tests and assessments? They know they would get a second or third chance from Miss Sue, for example, which Miss Sue, she's referring to herself. So how would you address that question, that concern? I think another, Angela said, I share your concern, Li Ling. So how would you address that?
Yvonne, Susan, me, any of us?
I started off in the chat just by noting that empathy and vulnerability isn't about being easy. In fact, it's kind of the hard work of establishing boundaries. And so, you know, when students, it is understanding a student's perspective, but also thinking about what is going to help them grow and thrive. And sometimes growing and thriving isn't the easiest path. It's not the path of least resistance. It's the path that has challenges that will help students to grow. So I think we do need to be clear. And in those moments when students do ask for, you know, oh, can I have an extension, you know, Professor Kobashigawa, sometimes the hard part for me is to say, no, you can't. You know, this is the timeline that we have. And that's, you know, also understanding that there are no extenuating circumstances and hardships of that. But part of that vulnerability and empathy is showing up to help people through some of those matters. Mary and Yvonne, if you want to jump in.
Yeah, one of the things that I always think of in these kinds of circumstances is something that Marshall Rosenberg says in The World of Nonviolent Communication. Connect before you direct.
Mm-hmm.
Connect before you have to do anything else that has to do. So the idea is connect with a person as a human being. That's the empathy piece. And when a student is seen and heard for what's really happening, then I can say, okay, then they feel like they're a human being rather than me saying, you can't do this. I would say, well, tell me about what's going on for you. And I would empathize. And then I say, okay, well, this is the deadline. These are the consequences of not meeting the deadline. And how can we work with that? But it's being empathetic isn't about necessarily not setting boundaries. I think that those are two separate things. But it is about connecting first as a human. Yvonne?
Yeah, I was also curious about the question that's related to assessments and assignment and final assignment. So I'm curious about the rest of the process and the learning process. How is for the students to be in the rest of the learning process? Because it's just Liling is just addressing the thing of final exams, assignments, and assessment evaluations. So.
Ling Ling, I see another comment there about, and then they hate you. I think, that is part of a hard thing about being an educator is how do I set clear, another thing that Brene Brown says, clear is kind. So I can be very clear about the boundaries of our work and also clear, if somebody's hating me, that's not really about me. That's about how they're uncomfortable with something that's going on in their life,
Mm-hmm.
which I may or may not contribute to, or I may or may not be able to work with, right? Because just a quick example, I remember I was teaching writing at a university in Japan many years ago, and I was teaching, writing is a hard skill, and I understand that people don't like to write. Many years I didn't like to write. And I told my students, I said, I understand that this is hard for you, and if you want to pass the class, these are the things you're going to have to do to pass the class. And it's your choice. But so if you don't want to write, I'm not asking you to like writing. And I'm not asking you to like the class. That's a choice you're going to have to make. You're going to have to experience it. And if you want to pass the class, these are the things we have to do. Right? So creating space for students to not be happy is actually a really powerful technique as a teacher. Because what happened then is people like, oh, it's okay if I hate this? I'm like, yeah. No problem. It's your hate. It's your energy. What impact is that having on you? Right? And then they started, oh, I'm spending a lot of energy hating this. I could do other things with that energy. Right?
Wow, so I see. Oh, I'm so sorry to interrupt. I said I see other comments. Leonore said, couldn't text when I was using my cell phone, so much to say. That's awesome. My respects, Mary. So I know the session is technically done. We're about 4 minutes over, but Leeling also had some other comments. He said, how many chances should we give them? And wow, so it's up to our speakers. If you want to hang out here a little bit longer.
Julio or Kiran, if either of you have anything you want to say or ask, not to put you on the spot, you don't have to, but you all here, you have microphone power, which is beautiful.
Specific question.
Okay. Thanks.
I agree with Mary in the sense that if we set the clear instructions before starting something with our students, I think we'll avoid setting boundaries somehow. Yes, and also, as you mentioned before, empathy is not something that you can plan ahead. I mean, you keep it there with you, but it appears on the right time, the right moment. So if you have those problems, then we can also show empathy on that spot of time, instead of planning and say, what am I going to say if someone comes and tells me I need more time? So if it comes, when it comes, then you'll deal with that. But taking into account that area of empathy, that's what I have to say, because that's what happened to me somehow. Sometimes students, they came to me and say, well, I need more time. And I say, well, why? What happened? Yes. And they tell me, or they told me what the problems were. And somehow I say, okay, I think you deserve that. But then I can be kind of judgmental. So that's something that we have to balance well. No? That's what I have to say with the power of my microphone.
Well, we are actually 6 minutes over time, so unless our speakers have anything else to say, which you know what, I also see some more comments from Li Ling, and I think it might be a wonderful idea for you to actually message Mary or Yvonne or Susan directly. Maybe they can help you out. There's a direct message box up there. You can go and get that. And also, I don't think you can see it very clearly, the emails on the slides. So if you want to direct message them, that would be wonderful. I think that she could, any of the three of them can give you wonderful feedback. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. It was wonderful. Oh, great. I see Mary putting the emails in the chat. That's awesome. Okay, so I'm going to have to start kicking people out because it's time to go. Thank you so much to our wonderful speakers.
Thank you, Christina.
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. I've really enjoyed it. I feel like I've learned a lot. And I wanted to refrain from making more comments because I wanted everyone else to, and I couldn't ask questions because I was like, oh, so many other good questions. So, but thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right, we'll see
Thank
you all.
A big thank you to Relo Andes for organizing this and for the course and for all the organizers. Thank you, Julio, for joining us on stage. And a big thank you to Susan and Yvonne for working together. It's beautiful. Thank you.
Thank you, Mary.
Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.